I'd find him. There was a man who owned a very large company, and he was getting ready to retire. So he brought all of the big men who were under him into his office. And he said, now I'm getting ready to retire, and I need to find somebody to replace me. But it's a very hard decision for me to make. So what I'm going to do is give each one of you a seed. And I want you to go home and plant it. And after a year, I want you to bring your plant back to me and let me see what you have grown. So each man takes his seed and he goes home and he plants it. And they come back in several weeks and the men are all talking about how much their plants are growing and how pretty they are, and some of them have flowers and some have trees. And then there was John. And John stood back in the corner because nothing was happening with his seed. It wasn't growing. He was watering it every day and he was giving it fertilizer and he was taking care of it, but nothing was happening. So after a year was over, the president of the company came in and he said, okay, today's the day. I want you to bring all your plants in today and let me see them. So all the men brought their plants in, and John said, well, I'm just not going to work today because I have nothing to show. My plant didn't grow. Even after I watered it and fertilized it, it just didn't grow. So all the men brought their plants in, and after some coaxing from John's family, they finally convinced him just to go ahead and take his plant in anyway, even though it didn't grow. And they get in the meeting room, and the president comes in, and he's looking at all these beautiful trees and flowers, and John's kind of standing back in the back because his plant didn't grow. And the president walks by, and he's, that one's pretty. Yes, that one's beautiful. Well, that's a pretty flower there. And after he looks at all of them, he steps back, and he says, John, would you come up front, please? Well, you know what John thought. He thought, man, I'm going to be fired because my plant didn't grow. The president called John up and he said, no, bring your pot with you. And John brought his flower pot up. And it had nothing in it. And the president of the company looked at all the other men. And he said, I want you to meet your new president. Well, John said, surely you can't be talking about me because my plant didn't even grow. And he said, yes, John, I'm talking about you because you were the only one that was honest enough to bring back an empty pot. He said, you see, before I gave each one of you a seed, I punched a hole in that seed so it wouldn't grow. All of you other men went out and bought trees and flowers and brought them back in and pretended that you had grown them. John was the only one that was honest enough to bring back an empty pot. He will be your new president because I want somebody who's honest. Amen. And boys and girls, I tell you that to tell you that honesty is the best policy. Amen. When my children were growing up, I would tell them, be honest with me if you do something. You'll still get punished, but I promise you the punishment will be not near as bad as if you lie to me. And boys and girls, let me tell you, God gave mamas and daddies an extra sense when it comes to lying.
Amen.
They know. You can stand there all day long and look them in the face and say, but I didn't do it. They know. And the punishment is always worse if you lie. So you remember, honesty is always the best policy. Amen. If you do wrong, admit it. And adults is something that, this was sent to me on the computer the other day, and I thought, you know, we all have friends. We all have a very good friend that we feel like we can tell anything to at any time. But I thought this was something, it made me stop and think, and I want to read it to you. If I happened to show up on your doorstep crying, would you care? If I called you and asked you to pick me up and something had happened to me, would you come? If I had one day to live the rest of my life, would you be a part of that day? If I need a shoulder to cry on, would you give me yours? Or are you just someone that people call when they're bored? Think about that. Let's pray. Father, we thank you.